welcome to episode 23 of A Locker Talk Live. This is our Friday pick show where we take a look at some of the must-watch games in the state of Texas, and we pick who's going to win. Joined by my man. You've been gone for a week now, it feels like. You've been gone for ages, it feels like. Scott, how you doing today, man?
Wac, we're doing good. I remember to click the unmute button this time. So we are already off to a great start. And it is Friday. Texas high school football week 2 is underway. It's good to be back. Yes, I was not in Texas. I was actually really far from the state of Texas. I was in Vermont. You even know where Vermont is on the map? I bet you a lot of people down here don't.
And it's beautiful. Let me tell you, those pictures you sent me, absolutely gorgeous. Man, I was jealous seeing that scenery, man. Let me tell you. How was your trip to Vermont?
It was great. One of my wife's best friends got married, so shout out to Jess and Phil for getting married. And we also got to take, humble brag, a sunset sail on Lake Champlain in Burlington, Vermont. So that was a really good time. I'm going Jason and Lauren, I believe are their names, who were on there. And they were from Connecticut, but he knew a lot about Texas high school football, actually. So that just shows how big and well-known Texas high school football is across the entire country. So that's why we're here, bringing you some games, some picks, some games to watch out for this year or for this week.
Yeah, and you finished, I think, dead last in our Austin San Antonio picks. I think it was 1-4 this past week. Hopefully you have a better showing this week. Those picks will come out later today around, I think, 3 o'clock on the website. But we got some Texas picks here. Josh was our kind of special contributor last week. It'll be me and you on these Friday shows, plus whoever else wants to come on, but mostly me and you.
Right.
So I am excited. We got some Austin San Antonio. We got some Houston, and we got some DFW. Bless you, by the way.
Thank you. Sorry.
Are you,
Live show.
Hey,
you never know.
Are you ready to get in these picks, man?
Let's get it, baby.
Well, let's start with our first matchup, and I think this matchup is an intriguing one in the sense that, you know, these two teams, they could do something depending on really how their teams come together and gel. On one end, you have Dripping Springs, who ended up starting a sophomore at quarterback last year after injury to their starter, and now he's kind of on the uptick to being one of the better quarterbacks in the Central Texas area. And you got Hayes, who had kind of what some would consider a Cinderella run to the state semis last year before losing to eventual state champion Katy. Because when you think of their district, you think Westlake and Lake Travis. Right now, obviously, Westlake went and won it all. But, you had Hayes that, got to the state semis. Like Travis got bounced in the first round. So Hayes is coming back. I think they're on a mission to prove, like last year wasn't really a Cinderella story, but it's because this team is a good team. Scott, I'll start with you. Who do you have in this one and why?
Yes. So it's also, I like these matchups early on too, because you get like Dripping Springs, Josh, if I'm not mistaken, is 5A, correct?
Yes, I believe so. I believe you're right. I'll verify that, but I believe you're right.
Right. So with Dripping Springs being 5A, and then you Hayes, as you mentioned, won Region 4 D2 in the state semi. So matchups don't generally get all that often, and so I thought you brought up a really good point there that Hayes wants to prove that they belong, because frankly they got blown out against Katy, and then Katy also blew out Cedar Hill in the state championship. So, I mean, no shame in that, but they want to prove that it wasn't a fluke. They're like, hey, we're here to stay and whatnot. But for this game, I'm going with the 5A school, Dripping Springs. I don't know if you want to call it an upset or not, but I got Dripping Springs. I think they got a pretty good team over there. So they're my pick for this week against Hayes.
Yeah, this one's going to be really intriguing. I think it's going to come down to Hayes' rushing attack versus Dripping Springs defense. Has this defense, I mean, they lost some pieces from last year's squad, so how quickly can they rebuild? With that being said, I think it's still too early in the season. I think Dripping Springs defense won't be fully there yet. I think by the time district rolls around, they'll be in full swing. But I think for this one, I'm going to give it to Hayes. New mascot, by the way. They're now the Hayes Hawks. as you can see on the screen there. No longer the Hayes Rebels. So Hayes Hawks will get the win in this one. And you're right, Dripping Springs is 5A. So I think they'll come up just short. But this one is definitely a game I think I told Shana yesterday on our preview show. This is one of those where these two teams you want to kind of pay attention for because no matter who wins or who loses, I think this game will kind of be a benchmark for both teams towards the end of the season, where you can look back on and say, okay, this game, well, you can kind of see that where these two teams were headed. So that is our first Austin San Antonio game. We have one more to talk about, and this is probably, I would say, this is probably the marquee matchup in the state of Texas this week. Maybe I'm a little biased because I'm in the Hill Country area, but that is going to be Judson versus Lake Travis. Judson, as we know, got that what many would consider upset win over DeSoto last week. I think all of us had picked DeSoto in the picks, and Judson kind of shut us up, if you will, with a very great defensive performance. Their offense will need, I think, a little work in this game. And then, of course, Lake Travis beat a very good Arlington Martin team as well. Scott, who do you have in this one?
I did not foresee Judson beating DeSoto. I mean, DeSoto is one of those powers across the state, very recognizable brand in Texas high school football. And so is Judson, I would say. Judson has made some runs to some deep playoff runs. So this is a tough one. This is a fun one. Judson beat a really good DeSoto team. You also had Lake Travis. Arlington Martin was the DFW preseason top 10. So Lake Travis, you almost, it's hard to get caught up in last year's because of the whole COVID thing. They got knocked down in the first round of the playoffs. Kind of similar in a different way. Hayes, who we just talked about, they want to prove that they belong and show why they made a deep playoff run. Lake Travis knows that they belong, but they want to prove to everybody that this was a fluke. So it's a tough game. It's a really good game, Austin versus San Antonio. For this one, I'm going with Judson. I think, and it's both teams are coming off a high, and maybe I got caught up in. I'm afraid that Judson might be a little bit too high, beating DeSoto, but you can say the same thing about Lake Travis beating Arlington Martin. So I'm rolling the dice, going with Judson. Converse Judson gets the W.
That would be really interesting to see them really, quote unquote, have two upsets 2 weeks in a row. And if they win tonight, Judson's putting the whole state of Texas on notice, in my opinion, doing what they did to DeSoto week 1, and then if they were to beat Lake Travis in week 2. I mean, these teams are notorious for kind of having, I wouldn't say a rivalry, but maybe somewhat, right? So you look from 2013 to 2017, Judson won 3 in a row over Lake Travis, but then starting in the playoffs in 2017, 18, and 19, Lake Travis has gotten the better than the last 3 times. And it's going to be interesting. So what I had said yesterday on our preview show is that I think it's going to come down to Judson's offense, right? So I think the defense will be there. I think the defense will make some stops. But when you look at the game last week with DeSoto, Judson's offense kind of sputtered a little bit in the second half and allowed DeSoto to climb back into that game until, Judson was able to make a defensive stop to win the game. I think they're going to need to have more consistency through four whole quarters of football if they do hope to win. But I think in this one, I think Lake Travis will be too much. I think that when we talk about that bad taste, and by the way, that's my pick. I'm picking Lake Travis. I think when you look at last year and, they missed like the last month of the season for COVID, came into the playoffs cold, and then got bounced in the first round. I think they have a bad taste in their mouth. I think this is kind of maybe like a revenge tour, if you will, for Lake Travis. So because of that, and seeing what they did to DeSoto last week, Lake Travis isn't going to come into this game sleeping on Judson. So I think Lake Travis is going to get the win here. I think it's going to be a really close game, though. And I would not be surprised at all if Judson does win, but I am going to pick Lake Travis in this one.
It's a good one. It really is. I think that was very insightful, Josh. Well done.
I try my best. Let's move on to the DFW area now. This one, the battle of Denton's. You got Denton Ryan versus Denton Geyer, both coming off wins. Of course, Denton Ryan with the very impressive win over Longview. Scott, does Denton Geyer get the win over Denton Ryan their quote unquote little brother, if you will.
Hey, Josh, did I send you my pick for this one? I'm
No.
checking. I'm checking the email right now. I don't think I put this one on here,
Well,
so I'm
so
going off the cuff, right?
so the for the audience at home, we have two separate picks, right? So we have Austin San Antonio picks only, which is the ones you sent me, and then we have these games, uh yeah. So you gave me the picks for the Austin San Antonio, but these ones I get to hear for the first time. So I'm excited to see who you get to pick for this one.
Okay. Hey, audience, I'm going along with you. We appreciate everybody that's watching. Let us know in the chat who you got for this week. Denton Ryan versus Denton Geyer. Man, this is a tough. Denton ISD, how about this? I mean, these are some of the better teams in the entire state of Texas. Denton Ryan winning the state championship, Denton Geyer being right there the last couple of years. So for this one, though, I'm rolling with the Raiders. The Raiders. Denton Ryan comes up, the Battle of Dentons. I think Shane and Williford said they've only met like 3 times in the last 7 years. This is one of those games where I would love to see more year in and year out. I'm going with the Raiders of Denton Ryan.
Yeah, so I mean, it's funny because Denton Ryan is the lower classification, but are they really? I said little brother, but are they really the little brother? The only little in terms of classification. Like you said, Denton Ryan.
That is it.
Yeah,
Denton Ryan. Number of students.
Denton Ryan won it all last year. Denton Geyer got to the state semis, I believe, before losing. I think it was Cedar Hill that they lost to, if I'm not mistaken. But I can't remember. I think it was, though. Yeah, Scotty's giving me the thumbs up on that one. But look, here's the thing. Denton Geyer has a new quarterback. It's their second week. His second week starting quarterback, Jackson Arnold. So first start, not too bad at all. But then you've got Denton Ryan, who absolutely demolished Longview. Everyone thought that was going to be a closer game than what it was. And Denton Ryan's defense just came out and dominated Longview's offense. I think after watching that game, I was kind of on the fence because, I kind of have some of these games picked out in advance. So I obviously had Denton Ryan versus Denton Geyer circled for week 2. And after seeing how dominant Denton Ryan was against Longview, I can't pick against them. I have to go with Denton Ryan. They just look so dominant. And so I'm sorry. Hey, maybe Denton Geyer will prove me wrong, but just based off of what we saw last week, Denton Ryan, they looked every bit of the part to try and get back for a repeat performance this year in 5A. So I am picking Denton Ryan.
Hey, Josh, did you have a 4-legged friend join you?
I did.
Let me see which one.
Yeah, that was Henry. I got 2 dogs, Lucy and Henry. That was Henry coming in and joining the fray there. So
yeah, I thought I saw Henry come in through the side there, through the curtain.
He's got to see what's going on. He's like, I got to make sure this room's all clear. Moving on to our other DFW matchup is Argyle versus Pleasant Grove. Of course, as we know, Argyle state champions, looking to get back. Pleasant Grove's been there. I think they won 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And they are looking to get back. This should be a slobber knocker. Who do you got, Scott?
Man, I know Argyle lost a lot for last year's team, but I'm still rolling with the Eagles. Argyle Eagles, Pleasant Grove, coming all the way from Texarkana. Is that right, Josh?
That's correct. Texarkana, Pleasant Grove.
Yeah, so a little East Texas Metroplex game matchup here. I'm going with Argyle's. I think they got a lot of firepower, so that's why I'm going with the Eagles.
Yeah, this one, it's hard to judge Pleasant Grove's Week 1 performance. They traveled and played an Arkansas team, as they probably would, being right there on the Arkansas-Texas border in Texarkana. And Argyle actually had a pretty good win. They beat a very strong Fort Worth Nolan team, 45-29, in the Tom Landry Classic. So that was a very convincing win for them. And yeah, I think I have to agree with you here. I think I have to go Argyle in this one. I think Argyle has just kind of been on that roll the last few years, and even when they lose the pieces, they're able to rebuild quickly. I think they've done that so far, and I look for Argyle to get the win in this one. Maybe a little bit closer. They had a let's just see if I can make 16-point win last week. I think it might be around a 10-point win on this one, but I'm going Argyle on this one. Let us move.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, so I mean, just a quick note to that point. We talk a lot about programs in high school football. You have Katy, North Shore, Westlake, South Lake Carroll. Like these are just at Allen. There are so many just great programs that are year in and year out. It's almost like a plug and play because these kids are playing Pop Warner. They know the offense, whatnot. Argyle is one of those programs, in my opinion. And even though they lost a lot, they made so many deep runs in the playoffs, and then finally got over the hump and won that state championship last year. So now they're like, hey, we know we can do it. So that's why I think they have the confidence now. There's one of the programs that were already confident in themselves, but now they have cemented it, and they want to show everybody that they are one of the premier 4A programs in the state.
Yeah, and speaking of Allen, that's actually our next game, Atascocita versus Allen. Last year, this game wasn't very close at all. It was a blowout by Allen. I know. I think Josh. So if you haven't watched yet, go back and watch the VYPE Coaches Corner, 6 p.m. on Wednesdays with Coach Williams, Coach McDowell, Josh Cook, and Dennis Silva. A big old stack of Houston right there, just giving you the picks. And they picked this game, and Josh Cook actually picked Atascocita. He said they're going to go and upset Allen in Allen on Friday, which Allen hasn't lost there in, I don't know how long. Will Atascocita be the one to end this big old winning streak in Allen for the Eagles?
Atascocita does not get it done. Josh Cook is huge on Allen. He loves Gavin Sessions, and I think Gavin Sessions is a great quarterback. He loves
You mean he is
Coach
huge on
Craig Stelp over
Atascocita?
there. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Atascocita. He's always big on Atascocita, year in and year out. Atascocita, though, they always seem to just fall a little bit short of expectations, I would say. They still got a great program over there, wonderful players. We mentioned Gavin Sessions, the quarterback. They have huge Cam Dewberry, 5-star offensive lineman. They are a really solid team, but I just don't think that they get it done versus Allen. Unfortunately, Allen had a D lineman. I'm blanking on his name, but he just transferred from Morton Ranch, 5-star. They have a lot of talent up there, and Atascocita does too, but I don't think they have enough to get past Allen. That's why I'm picking the Eagles.
Yeah, and in fact, I said it's been a while. In fact, Allen's never lost at their home stadium since their new one that they've built.
Never?
Never. Yeah. So
what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a crazy stat for you. And I know it came about. I think one of the first years was Arizona Cardinals quarterback Kyle Allen. That's not his name. I said it wrong last time too.
Kyler Murray.
Kyle. I don't know why I'm always thinking Kyle. I said that last time too, Scott. I said that last time too, and for whatever reason, I think I did. Man, Kyle Murray, yeah, because he went undefeated 3 years, right? 3 years in a row, he went undefeated. So definitely helped having him as the quarterback. But to this game, to this point, I will say Allen did start a little slow last week against Plano East. Now, of course, they didn't win by 26, starting slow and still winning by 26.
Man,
I think if they can't start slow again against Atascocita, I do think Atascocita is going to be hungry to avenge that loss. It was not a pretty game, that one last year. That being said, I do still think this is Allen's game. I don't think Atascocita will be the one to end that reign of consecutive wins at Allen. So Josh Cook may be a fan of Atascocita on this one, but I do not think they pull it out, unfortunately.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, so last game, I think this one may be the easiest of the bunch to pick personally when I look at these games. It is North Shore versus Klein Collins. Scott, does Klein Collins stand a chance here?
Did you watch the Spring versus Klein Oak game last night by chance, Josh?
I did not watch it, but I did see clips. I did see clips of it because obviously Josh Cook was there providing highlights on VYPE Houston's Twitter. So if you don't follow along on Twitter, VYPE Houston, and it looked every bit as dominant. Why do you ask?
Spring won 49-0, and I'm fearful that we might have a similar score here with North Shore and Klein Collins. So I'm going with North Shore Mustangs. They defeated Shadow Creek in week 1. Klein Collins is a phenomenal football program. I want to give them credit. They're no slouch. They Klein Collins last year gave North Shore a serious run for their money, and they would have won if their quarterback, his name's escaping me, he actually got banged up in late third, early fourth quarter. Then North Shore was able to come back and win. So Klein Collins, they are good. 49-0 was a bit much. That was mean on my part, so I apologize for that. But North Shore Mustangs come out with the W, and they move on to 2-0 in the season.
Let me tell you something about this game. This is going to be one of the greatest upset. No, I'm just playing. It is going to be North Shore, I think. I think North Shore still has some work to do on offense. I think they have to figure some stuff out there. I think, week 2 of the season, that's understandable. But I think the defense is going to be what's going to drive North Shore early in the season as they get those offensive pieces in place and comfortable, if you will. So, I think they're going to rely on their defense heavily, probably until week 3 or 4. And I think they have the pieces on defense to do it. So with that being said, yeah, I do think this is going to be a win for North Shore. And again, this isn't a knock on Klein Collins. When you really think of, like you mentioned earlier, there's some powerhouses of Texas high school football, and when you have to play those teams, for the most part, it's not going to be a game you think about, when, especially as someone that's picking the games, you're going to think that the other team could win. So this is no discredit to Klein Collins, and heck,
yeah, it's
upsets can happen. Upsets can happen. Yeah,
and I'm looking who Klein Collins played week 1. Do you know who they played week 1?
Go ahead and tell me.
They played Atascocita, who we just talked about playing Allen. Game we just picked. They lost 48-7.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Yeah, that's why we're going with North Shore. Yeah. It's Klein Collins might be in a tad of a rebuilding there. Josh Cook and Mala would know a little bit more about that than I think you or I would. But yeah, that's why we're going with things from North Shore.
How about any other games? And I know that's the end of it. We have 6 hard picks, if you will, that we have kind of scheduled to pick. But any other games that might interest you that you want to talk about, Scott?
There is one that comes to mind.
Go ahead and hit me with it.
Cedar Hill versus Westlake.
Yeah, that's Euless Trinity versus Westlake.
Euless Trinity, I'm sorry. Euless Trinity versus Westlake, I think is a very interesting matchup. Euless Trinity has had some great football teams throughout the years. If I'm not mistaken, maybe won a state championship here and there too. But then Westlake, led by the Clemson commit, Cade Klubnik, and Westlake winning back-to-back state championships, D2 and D1. That's a pretty interesting matchup. I love these early matchups. We talked about Atascocita Allen. That's Houston versus Dallas. This is Dallas versus Austin. You kind of get the – and then we talked about Judson versus Lake Travis, San Antonio versus Austin. With these powerhouse programs playing against each other in different cities, there's a lot of bragging rights that go along with this. The Houston and Dallas rivalry is very popular and I think well-known, not only throughout the state but throughout the country, just in general, because Houston's a lot better than Dallas. What can I say? But I digress. So this is a pretty interesting matchup. DFW versus Austin. Euless Trinity has a really good defensive line, and Westlake still has an incredible offensive line. So that's why I'm very curious to see how this one plays out. In my opinion, though, I think Westlake still gets it done and moves to 2-0 in the season.
That was actually going to be one of mine as well. Westlake versus Euless Trinity. I think you're right. I like it. Like, whether you win or lose, I think it's always important before district to schedule maybe those opponents. They're maybe tougher or they're going to challenge you because, sometimes when you look at some people now, not to say Westlake has an easy district because they do have, Hayes and Lake Travis in that district, but when you look at some other schools who, for instance, your Carthage, right? Carthage has a pretty easy district to get through on their way to the playoffs. And so, they want to schedule a team like a Crosby early in the season to challenge themselves to get themselves ready for the playoffs because, yes, they've been there like 20 times in a row. I'm exaggerating a little, but not that far off. They need all that early season, kind of work, if you will, to get them ready for that playoff run that they're expected to go on. And so I think games like this, for Westlake and for Euless Trinity playing each other, it's beneficial for the programs. And I am interested to see how Westlake does, right? So, I think the biggest question, and yes, they won pretty convincingly on week 1, but it's still going to be, how is this defense going to look throughout the whole season? So I think scheduling this game is important for them. I am also thinking Westlake is going to win this game. Westlake, until they lose, they're going to, I think Westlake's a favorite in all the games. Obviously, the Westlake versus Lake Travis game, you got to circle that one on your calendar. But yeah, Westlake for me is the way to go on that one, Scott.
Josh, how about you? Are there any games that stick out to you? Because I'm going to give us a shout out to pigskinprep.com. They have incredible schedule for everybody to see. I mean, how about Plano Prestonwood playing Coppell, a TAPS 6A school playing Coppell, a UIL 6A school there too. That is interesting. Then you got, and more in the DFW area, Highland Park and Flower Mound. Those are just a couple that stick out to me before I scroll down here on across the state. But Josh, I'm doing that. Are there any other games that stick out for you?
Maybe not some. I don't know if people would call this a big game, but I know one I'm keeping an eye on is Poth versus Fall City. It's a 3A versus a 2A. This is Central Texas. You gotta know the teams, right? I think Poth is looking. I think they got out in the second round last year, which was a little too early for them if you were to ask them. And then you look at Fall City, a 2A team that is expected to. They got to the state semis last year. I think they lost to the eventual champion Shiner, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong on who they lost to, but they did lose to some. I think one of they lost in the state semis. So they are. This is a game that happens every year. They are literally like 10 minutes apart or something like that. So very close communities that always play. I know Poth got the better of them last year. It is 3A versus 2A, but I'm interested to see how Fall City. One, if Fall City can hang with Poth, because that's a good sign for them heading into 2A play, or if Poth can just blow them out like last year, because then that's a good sign for Poth to try and make that 3A run this year.
Yeah, that's right. Looking at two other games that stick out to me while I'm looking at it is Tomball Memorial versus Beaumont Westbrook. That game last year was an absolute shootout. And Tomball Memorial ended up coming up on top. So you have Beaumont Westbrook, who is led by, I guess he's A&M commit now, Bryce Anderson. If I'm not mistaken there, Josh. He was an LSU commit at the time, but now he's at – sorry, phone call. Now I think he's committed to the Aggies in College Station. So incredible athlete there. So Beaumont Westbrook will try to avenge their loss from last year. And then the other one that I like is Bridgeland versus Shadow Creek. Bridgeland last week played Klein on ESPNU, not to be confused with what's that other school in Ohio? Bishop
Sycamore.
Bishop Sycamore, that's right. Not Bishop Sycamore. Klein and Bridgeland are actual high schools in the greater Houston area, but Bridgeland has Connor Wigman. Connor Wigman is the best quarterback in the city of Houston, in my humble opinion. Take for it as you will. But he is the real deal. He is a stud. And Shadow Creek lost to North Shore week 1. The new quarterback, still a bunch of athletes, 2 years removed from his state championship at the 5A level. Made a pretty good run in 6A, but ended up losing to Katy in the playoffs last season. How will Shadow Creek bounce back? Because in Shadow Creek's first 2 years of varsity football, it was at the 5A level, but in their first 2 years, they only lost one game. Bridgeland is only in their third or fourth year of varsity football as well. So these are two relatively young programs in the city of Houston, newer schools, and with some incredible athletes across the board. So I'm interested to see how Connor Wigman, if he's able to keep the ball rolling, and how does Shadow Creek respond after their loss to North Shore.
Yeah, that one is like, I think, especially early on in the season, I think a lot of people are going to have their eyes on Bridgeland to see what they can do. I think Connor Wigman is the real deal. It's just going to be, can the rest of the football team circle around him? By the way, Fall City lost to Mart last year in the playoffs. That's who they lost to. Just wanted to point that out. The last game I'm interested in, again, this is kind of, I like to throw some love to the lower classification. So we got Wimberley and Cuero, right? So Wimberley came up just short a few years ago in the state finals. And last year, I think they were bounced towards the end, if not the state semis, the round before. Cuero won a couple of years ago, of course, with UT. I guess running back, wide receiver high. I think he's wide receiver classified, Jordan Whittington. And last year kind of had an off season, but they looked every bit as dominant last week in their win against Lavernia. I think that is going to be a good game to watch and really a good indication of not only where Wimberley is at heading into this year, because there's a lot of high expectations in Wimberley, but also with Cuero, and both of these teams are 4A schools. So really just what these two are made of in the 4A, because at the end of the day, let's see here if I can see, are they in the same classification as Carthage? 4A D2 for Cuero, so they would have to play Carthage, because Carthage is 4A D2, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken there. And then let's see, Wimberley is, give me a second while I...
3A, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I believe they are 4A. Let's see here. I just don't know if it's D1 or D2. It is D2 as well, so they're both D2. And so, it's really going to be an indication of where these two teams stand and really have to compete with Carthage. So, because at the end of the day, if you're going through D2, you're going through Carthage. So, and this is good for Wimberley because they do have their district. They have a couple of teams that are going to be those type of easy wins we talked about. And so playing a team like Cuero, especially if Cuero is as good as they seem to be after last week, it's going to be good for them. So that is also one of my games to watch, Cuero versus Wimberley.
J-Dub, showing some love to the smaller schools, man. I love it.
Hey, I got to do what I got to do. So, but those are our picks. By the way, I will pick, I'm going to stick with what I know. I'm picking Wimberley in that one. So I do got to pick that game. Of course, it's a pick 'em show.
There you go.
So I will say, I don't think it'll be by much, and Cuero could easily win that game. But I'm gonna pick Wimberley in this one. Don't let me down, Wimberley.
I'll go Cuero.
There you go.
Just to go
a little different from
me. A little different from you.
Because I think we pretty much we picked the same on quite a bit. I think maybe Dripping Springs and Hayes was. I think that was the only one we picked different. So yeah,
I did some between Dripping Springs and then whoever I went with a couple of 5A schools beating some 6A programs. How about that?
Yeah, you went with some upsets there. But again, that's not always unheard of. I mean, Carthage did that just last week, and of course it is Carthage. So you can't really be.
That turned out to be a phenomenal game. I said to keep an eye on that game, and then turned up. It was a touchdown, a kickoff return for touchdown that ended up being the difference of that game. It's insane. And I think also to talk about that one, since I was on vacay for a little bit, I was really impressed with Crosby. Because Carthage is Carthage. It's week one, so teams are trying to figure it out. But it's easy to think that Crosby's run last year was potentially a fluke, and so I think they were able to, even though they lost, they were still able to tell everyone, hey, it wasn't a fluke. Coach Jair Prieto out there, they're like, we are a program that is here, and we're ready to make another deep run at the 5A level. And then, we touched on it earlier, Spring. Keep an eye on Spring for this year, dominating again against Klein Oak, because they're also in Region 2. So depending on the 6A level, how they distribute D1 and D2, because we were talking about Bridgeland earlier, you could have a Spring versus Bridgeland matchup just in D2 coming out of Houston alone. And Bishop Davenport versus Connor Wigman. Bishop Davenport is the real deal. That guy is a stud. He is every bit as good as he is sold. He's committed to Utah State, and he's got Spring already humming. So that could be a potential matchup down the road to keep an eye on.
Well, if you do want to catch some Friday night football, we will have it on VYPE. Of course, check out our website. The very first article is our Friday night lineup. Over 20 games, some on VYPE, some with our live stream partner, Flow. Be sure to check out those. We got so many great games. And then we'll be back on Monday. I know Monday is a holiday. I think we will have a show still. We got to talk Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas sports. So nothing drastic, but nothing extremely long, I should say. Maybe it will be drastic. Who knows? But we will be back.
We're doing a show on Monday?
We will do a show Monday at noon just to rock and roll with that. So not like I said, nothing too long. But we got to talk some sports. Sports doesn't sleep on holidays. So we will
I
be
might
back.
have to move around the tea time. I might have to move around the tea time then,
Hey,
Josh.
join the show from hole 18. From hole 18. That's how
Bro,
you gotta
I'm
do
not
it.
even kidding. I flew off at 11:52 on Monday.
Hey, you just gotta be holding it while you're driving driving the cart. So, but hey,
Yeah.
it will be.
Maybe we'll just flip. Maybe we'll flip the camera to you whenever it's my turn to hit a shot, and then we'll go back and forth.
Hey, we got to strap the cameras to the golf ball. There you go. That's what we got to do. But hey, so much action tonight. Be sure to check out all of it, and we will be back Monday for the Austin San Antonio DFW show. Tuesday, of course, is the Houston show. Until then, I'm Wac. That's Scotty. This has been Lock and Talk Live, everyone. Have a good one.